Good morning, Bits, and welcome. I'm joining all of you from the communications panel. It is day 3 of what's been an incredible AGConf so far, and I'm excited and delighted to be joined here with actual customer of ours in what is an AGConf exclusive customer panel. As a company, we've always put our customers at the center of everything that we do and build. So what better way to learn than to hear from our customers directly? I'm really excited that we can make this happen here for all of you today. We've got 45 minutes together, so get comfortable, refill your coffees, your waters, or whatever it is you're drinking at this hour. I'm going to start by turning it over to our 3 panelists here to introduce themselves to all of you. Chris, over to you first.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you all, virtually that is. My name's Christopher Ejbich, but feel free to call me Chris. I work for a company called Wealthsimple, and I am their manager of IT operations. I've been with the company about 4 years, and we've been using 1Password that entire time. But a fun fact about it is I love to use 1Password and create vaults in specific. And my favorite item is finding the right picture for the right vault. There's something so satisfying about getting to go on Google search and just finding that right one. Fun fact about me, I'm a huge outdoorsman. I love to camp, paddle. I've been all over Ontario and Quebec. Whitewater is my passion in particular. And I'll hand it over to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick here from Checkr. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see everybody virtually. Hope everybody's staying safe. So I've been with Checkr for 7 months now. I lead our corporate IT strategy, essentially an internal consultant for our IT operations group. And I think 1Password, something that I've experienced over the years is like what Chris said, the vaults and managing the vaults has been something from a back-end perspective has been quite fun. I always like to see how much we can put in place from a least privilege perspective. So yeah, and that's been great for me. I've been using 1Password personally for many years now, and where I came from, the previous role, we use 1Password as well. So when I came to Checkr, it was cool to see that they had it as well.
Hi guys, my name is Thuc. I work at Snowflake. I am the site coordinator for the Denver office. I've been with Snowflake a little over 3.5 years. I first discovered Snowflake, 1Password when I joined Snowflake. They were using kind of a local version. I love the functionality of it, of creating complex passwords and convenience of using shortcut keys, autofill and such. Fun fact about me, I'm originally from San Francisco, moved to Denver a couple of years ago, and I am a huge audio lover, I guess. I collect a lot of vinyl and play little instruments here and there, and DJ'd growing up and didn't work in IT before.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, welcome. And we're glad to have you with us. Thanks again for taking the time to join us here today. So let's dive right in here. The 3 of you have mentioned that you were previously 1Password users. And so I want to start by going to the very beginning of your journey with 1Password. Tell us a little bit about how you first discovered us and how or why 1Password became a priority for yourself or for the business. Chris, I'm going to turn this one over to you to kick us off.
It's funny, I was thinking about this conversation a little bit a few days ago and resonating about when I started to use 1Password. And I started to use it on a personal level over 10 years ago. I did a little reverse lookup in my email for fun, and I found my original iTunes receipt from 2011 when I downloaded 1Password version 3. And I was like, whoa, this is a cool throwback. So from a personal level, I've been using it for a long time, and it's something that I've been really passionate about. But from a work perspective, it's something that's just really resonated with both me and my users, which are often my employees or my customers. So in my previous role, I used to work for Apple. And I used to work at a place called the Genius Bar, something I'm sure all of you may be familiar with, visited at some point in time. And we often got customers who, candidly would be like, I don't know what my password is, or, can you help me remember my password? Or, oh yeah, I know that, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And you quietly do the little face palm to yourself and think, oh no. So 1Password became a huge tool of mine because I used it myself to share with everyone else and say, hey guys, you should really look at using a password manager or something to, store your credentials and therefore use a number of different credentials and, candidly speaking, secure them behind something. So from a personal standpoint, it really got reinforced in my work life. And, from a IT professional to just a general customer, that was something that I really pushed for a long period of time. About 4 or 5 years ago, I made a transition to the corporate world, and I joined Wealthsimple. And I was really happy to see at that time that Wealthsimple had already implemented 1Password as a password management solution. So I was really lucky in that respect because I didn't have to go through a entire education process through all my end users, my employees, to sort of explain to them the benefits of a password manager. But the majority of the people at the time had experience to that. When I joined Wealthsimple, we were only about 100 people. So small company, small vibe, very easy to, incorporate software and scale it up quickly. But we've been growing quite rapidly as a company. We recently surpassed 1,000 employees, and scaling that growth with the use of a software like a password manager has been, a huge priority because we are a fintech and customer safety and therefore our safety and security are always front of mind. But from a secondary perspective, just keeping up with that end user education. As we've grown, our employee base has grown, and we need to make sure that we can, maintain a bit of that education and that ability to say, hey, this is what a password manager is. Not everybody is going to had that experience before, and it's really a priority of ours to say, this is an important tool for you to use for the reason of protecting both yourself, but also, the rest of your employees and our customer base at large. So from a security perspective, it's just always a priority, and that's a little bit about a history from, learning it and using it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. And was there anything about 1Password in particular for you, Chris, that really stood out from the others? I mean, you had the choice. There are other password managers out there. Is there anything about 1Password that had you sort of choose that instead?
Candidly, the design. I think you guys always have a little bit of a step forward on the overall design, at least in my opinion. I think we're all passionate about, candidly, the design of some applications, the way it looks, the user interface of it. I'm candidly, as you may hear throughout this chat, a pretty heavy Mac user. I used to work at Apple. So, I feel that 1Password really resonated with the design and the ecosystem that I felt with. And, there are other password managers out there, but from that perspective, not to say they didn't just look as good, but they didn't function as nicely based on their appearance at large.
That's great to hear. Yeah, lots of Mac fans in the audience. We're definitely big on design and take a lot of pride in that. I'd love to hear from Long. I know you've been with Snowflake for a little while now, and you've been through some pretty serious growth and change. Talk to me a little bit about your 1Password journey and sort of how that came to be.
Yeah. I honestly, prior to joining Snowflake, we didn't use it. I worked at Genentech for like 12 years as a biotech company, and we never used any password management tools. But joining Snowflake, they were using the like local only license, I guess, of 1Password, and great tool. I found it super beneficial, creating more complicated passwords and saving convenience and such. But just the fact that we couldn't help recover people if they forget their master passwords and they lose all their data, that was something that I was like, okay, we need to get the full version. So I kind of pushed for that. It took like a year or so before we finally got the budget to implement the enterprise version. And yeah, so far it's been great. Dimitri and some of your guys' team have been great, just working with us in terms of setting up training courses and things, and helping with creating knowledge articles to help people learn how to use it better.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, that's great to hear, and great little shout out for Dimitri there.
Yeah.
Patrick, I'm going to come to you for this next one. As a security professional, you have the very tall order of keeping your company and your employees safe. What are some of the barriers that you find yourself commonly facing, and how do you manage to drive change effectively within the organization?
Yeah, great question. So I look at my role at Checkr a bit twofold, right? We've been having this chat internally for for a couple months now. Checkr is a little bit of background on Checkr, no pun intended. We do background checks, and we're trying to stir the market up. A lot of the companies that do background checks currently are brick and mortar rather. They do a lot of it's a lot of paper, right? It's not very digital. So we're definitely trying to change that up. And our product, I think, is being successful at that. Internally, so my role at Checkr, obviously, I wear many hats, and obviously protecting, CIA is of utmost importance to us, right? But we also look at Checkr as a potential differentiator in the marketplace, right? So we've talked a lot about Apple. Many folks here likely synonymize Apple with privacy, right? So we're looking to do the same thing with Checkr and security. So that's something that we have been taking very seriously over the past probably year or so, at least the 6 months that I've been there. Keeping employees safe is something obviously that is top of mind, and the CIA of our customers and our internal employees is what we do day to day, right? I think some of the barriers that we see are, especially at Checkr, and I'll talk a little bit about Checkr specifically, is a bit of a startup culture, right? The individuals here are used to having access to pretty much anything to get the job done, which it really hits one of our core tenets, which is, obviously ownership and grit, as our company objectives that we have and company goals, and our ethos is aligned to a lot of those areas. And so, like, getting the job done no matter what is something that's important to us. It's been driving a large part of the business. Though as we've matured and as we are looking to IPO, we pulled in some other folks like myself to help kind of put some guardrails around things, right? And so I think some of the challenges we're seeing there are definitely around understanding how much staff is being used, and then making sure that authentication and authorization is one of our top controls that's implemented, and we have the visibility and detect capabilities in place, right? 1Password has been really helping us there. I think we're on a rollout journey with 1Password, candidly. A little bit of background too about 1Password, where I came from. Worked at Liberty Mutual Insurance for 8 years, and it all started there, where I was working with our internal SOC team, and there were so many folks that were asking for, like, how do I manage all of these accounts that I have, all these passwords, and we were looking to get budget, and obviously we presented the risk profile, and it was clear that a password manager would help us. But a large organization such as that, we were trying to figure out where the budget lies, right? Who's going to pay for this stuff? And we had 60,000 users, and we were looking to at least get 25% of those onto a password manager, and we went forward with 1Password as our decision. Though again, budget constraints were implemented, and so we couldn't move forward with it in my tenure there. When I came to Checkr, I found out that they had already had an existing relationship, and there were quite a few users that we had leveraging the solution. So when I came to Checkr, I did initial risk analysis, and that was actually one of the key controls that we had implemented for our user population, which is great. So I think lastly, driving change, right? I think within the organization, it's we're having this conversation currently as well around because our security team it was 1 to 2 people about a year ago. Now we're 6, aligned to specific domains within the company. We come together often and collaborate and try to figure out a way forward. And obviously, security metrics are huge, right? That's how you drive any effective change. And so we're looking at providing security metrics to our leadership that are reliable and that folks can make decisions based on. I've seen metrics in the past where folks have just kind of tilted their head and moved on with their day. So we're hitting that pretty hard. Also, I lead our security awareness and training program at Checkr. Again, wear many hats at a smaller company. We're about 800 folks right now. And where I came from, again, we had, I was involved in a lot of training and awareness from a risk perspective. Hey, Pat, what risks are you seeing? What are we tracking? What are you relaying to enterprise risk, right? And so coming to Checkr to lead that program has been great. It's been something that I've always been passionate about, and I think that plus other things, I'm getting a kind of a holistic understanding of deploying many different domains within security. I think driving change for 1Password is actually an objective that we have this year. actually this quarter, is to drive some of that adoption. And what it's been is really articulating what's the risk of current state with a lot of these individuals, and what's the added value with 1Password. And many folks don't understand. I think they're a little scared, especially the non-technical folks. So just articulating what how easy it is to set this thing up and leverage it has been something that has been helping us drive change to date.
That's really exciting. And through that growth, I think you touched on adoption, especially of certain stakeholders and teams in that. Like, are there any particular stakeholders or teams that you want to call out as being a little bit more difficult, or perhaps a little more resistant to some of the changes there?
Yeah, sure. So, and we definitely take, a risk-based, we try as best as possible to take a risk-based approach, right? So like our infrastructure team, folks that are managing our AWS environment and our product, but they're mostly technical folks. So they've been leveraging it, most of them, since before I got there, right? It's been some of the other called very, very attacked people, or people of interest for threat actors. Especially like our marketing department, our sales department, customer success department. They have been a little bit more resistant, I think, because it's just it's another kink in the chain to kind of get to where you need to be to do your work, which I think some of those folks are. Again, they're not used to. And again, we don't tell them. Obviously, it's voluntary currently, but we don't tell them that they have to use it, but they definitely, there's some resistance there, because again, it's just one other thing that they have to leverage. Usually once we show them, we create a vault for their group, right, or their department, and show them how easy it is to use. Usually it's not a problem. It's having that conversation and getting time to have that conversation. So I think what we've been trying to drive is a little bit more holistic approach, right? We have an internal marketing campaign. I've partnered with our marketing folks to be able to kind of send out Slack announcements or email blasts on certain things and show videos. And we've been getting some engagement there. We're just trying to hit it from multiple vectors, and hopefully we get the adoption we want here.
Awesome. That's great. Chris, curious to get your thoughts here as well. How are you working through some of the change management at Wealthsimple? Obviously, 1Password was already in place when you had arrived, but are you facing similar challenges with just getting other folks in the organization, to adopt and actually use it day to day?
You bet. Great question. Yeah, so I think we are a little lucky in the fact, that everyone is already using the software. So a little unlike, what Patrick said, it gives us a little bit of an advantage, because, to his point, once you have that shared vault in place, it creates a little bit of that foundation that encourages the rest of the team to start to participate and, build on that already existing design. So we're definitely fortunate there. But I'll tackle that question from sort of like a bigger scale in terms of, some of the barriers that we've been facing within our growth itself. And 100%, that's something that's been a huge concern for us. We're going through our growth, and security is 100%, always front of mind. So I think, in terms of difficulties to work through things, there's always a few things that, are strongly resonate with me. Patrick nailed one of them, which is just having metrics and like actually driven data behind the decisions that are being made. Because, having a project proposal is one thing, but having actual, metrics or data to back up said proposal and say, this isn't just something I'm saying, but you can tangibly see the results, is a really good step. But, not to throw any teams under the bus, because I think that's the last thing we want to do in terms of, difficult teams. But finance is always, one of those tricky ones. Spending money is spending money. And, in a growing company, that just rapidly changes. And as we double or triple in size, theoretically costs double and triple in size. So from their perspective, you need to make sure that we have the appropriate buy-in, and we're ourselves doing the right due diligence to say, the solution we're looking to implement is the right solution, and potentially isn't just fixing one problem, but can be tackling multiple problems at the same time. So, that's something that really resonates with me. And then secondly, just security, as I mentioned before, ensuring that, our teams, like our infrastructure and security teams, and ourselves as IT, have the opportunity to do the due diligence and, vet the software and test it. And, as new features and functionality are released, likewise, iterate upon our current functionality and see where we can, drive or gain improvements. Like a really good call out from a 1Password perspective is, we used to have an internal sharing tool, and we still have said internal sharing tool, but we're in a review process right now because you guys just created that secure share functionality built within 1Password itself. So from our perspective, if we can offload something that we're internally maintaining to you as a company, that sounds fantastic to us. We just need to make sure that we're, finding those barriers or those cautions and doing any due diligence that we need to. So I think that's fundamentally sort of, the biggest challenge through growth right now. And I think from a difficulty perspective, just ensuring that all of our new users, our new employees, those who are less tech savvy, are comfortable to pick up this tool. And, to I think Patrick's call out, are, comfortable in the fact that passwords are being managed by, an external party, IT, but it's not like we can view or see that information. It's not like we, can go and log into your bank account, because we can't do that. But just ensuring that those checks and bounds are in place to, educate everyone and say, we're not trying to spy on you, we're trying to help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic context, and it's a big part of what we're focused on as a company as well. And certainly our onboarding, our customer support teams, our customer success teams are really around how do we help you educate folks within the company. How do we give you the tools necessary to impart that change? So I think that's great context.
I will say, if you don't mind me jumping in here, the amount of content that you have there from a learning perspective, your academy, a lot of the materials, like I can reach out to 1Password representatives and just get whatever I need, it seems like, whereas other vendors, usually you have to, and not specifically in the password manager space, but just in general, it's usually difficult to get something that actually communicates to a broad user population what you're trying to convey. And I think it's been something that 1Password has been great at. So I just wanted to call that out and appreciate that.
Chris, similarly for you, I'd be curious to get a sense of, as you continue to grow, what are some of the things that you see sort of changing for yourself, for the company? And I guess maybe a follow-on question to that as well is, how can we continue to be a strong partner and help you support that change?
For sure. I think, Patrick nailed a few of them quite well, but I first just want to call on, over the last 2 years, COVID has fundamentally already changed like security and user access so much that, I think a lot of teams, initially were playing almost catch up right away. And now we're, almost just catching up with the fact that, oh, hey, like this isn't going away. We need to adapt to a remote first world. If you haven't already out there, like you need to, because it's just the reality of the situation. Employees don't all want to go back to the office. They want the ability to continue to work from home. At least some do. And, from a, trust perspective, we need the ability to see what's going on with those end users. So security is constantly evolving in that respect. I think a few call outs and things that really resonate with me is, from a tooling perspective, cloud-based everything, on-prem is, not a big thing anymore. Everybody wants to be able to put something in the cloud, not have to maintain the servers and the access themselves. And from a security perspective, candidly, often simplifies a lot of things because it's a third-party company who's managing a little bit of that infrastructure. SAML and SaaS are a huge thing. So like if you don't have an IDP in place, getting something like that set up from an identity management perspective is huge. And then automation. So I called on Skim, and we fully use the Skim Bridge integration from 1Password, but the ability to automate out most of your touch points is a fundamental, key item, both from a work perspective, because as soon as you automate it, you don't have to do as much work. You just have to oversee the automation, but also be from a security perspective, because, once you've automated something, it's usually a service account that's just going in and touching that thing automatically. There's no need for 15 different people to understand how to run that function and provide that function and or log in, to, Patrick or Long's point, to access, a high priority credential. It's locked away, it's safe, we know it's there, and we don't need to touch it. So I think automation and, candidly, working towards a zero touch mentality in all aspects of work are a huge thing going forward, and something that, I think all businesses are really focusing on. And then I also think a lot of companies going to the, remote mentality are also looking to get a lot of security certifications now, whether it's like a SOC 2 or a HIPAA or whatever. You need to be able to prove, hey, my stuff is safe, it is secure, you can trust us. So I think that's sort of an additional call out that I think a lot of people are, and companies are working towards right now. So I think those are a few of the things that I see changing right now. But one of the things that I also see, evolving and needing to evolve is just the transparency of security to your end user. And I think, we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of our conversation, and, we need to gain our end users' trust. They need to trust the programs that we use and, candidly, the information we gather about them. And I do think the ability for them to see, a basic bit of information, or, this is what we're collecting, or this is what we need to gather about you, is very transparent and very important, because I think it will help them buy into the end goal of security, because they're like, oh, I understand why you need to, understand what like my battery level is, or, what passwords I have access to. Like, oh, that makes sense to me. But, they don't just want to know, oh, he's tracking everything about me. So I think transparency with the evolving of those automations is very key as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you sort of you started answering that by talking a little bit about how remote work has sort of changed that. Certainly, the majority of the world, or the entire world, was remote for a while, and now many companies are sort of adopting hybrid scenarios. When you and I first chatted, I remember you were talking a little bit about that transition at Snowflake, sort of having either hybrid work environments or assisting other folks to go remote. Like, talk to us a little bit about what that was like from your end. What did that transition look like, and what are some of the ways that you had to shift or change some of your day-to-day practices to accommodate for that?
Yeah, it's very optional already. I think a lot of people like to come in to the office just to kind of have a presence of collaboration and everything. But once the pandemic hit, I think we had to shift a lot on my team, because it's really the support side, and basically adjust how we are dealing with new hires and such, and with make sure we ship, most of our hardware and everything, as well as implement it in like home office situations where we allow them to order, monitors and desktops and things. So it made things a little more, add another element on top of what we normally do. But yeah, I don't know, with the whole work from home situation, I feel like all of us are working way more than we normally did prior, when we were actually in the office, because it was like comfortable convenience, I guess. Well, I'm at home, but so many pings me, I can actually I'm gonna respond regardless, I guess.
So actually last week, we had a big announcement, and Jeff Shiner, our CEO, through some of these interviews, was actually talking a little bit about employee fatigue and how that's actually impacting security, right? And obviously, you talk a little bit about folks being remote and maybe being a little more fatigued, working a little more. What is that looking like from your side? Are you really seeing that manifest itself into more security errors at work? And if so, what are some of the ways that you're able to sort of mitigate that?
Yeah, from what I know, I mean, I don't see too much fatigue, but the company is kind of preemptively making sure we get extra, they call snow days, to kind of like balance things out, as well as our like HR teams and benefits teams are implementing like programs for mental health and such. So we have a lot of opportunities for taking courses for speaking to psychologists, or just meditation classes and things like that are online while we're at home, and as well as programs to help balance the excessive work that people tend to be doing when they're working from home. But yeah, maybe that's what we've been doing so far. But on my team, we just make sure we deliver what's needed in a timely manner, and work closely with people that we higher and such.
All right. So I'm going to bring us back to your day-to-day with 1Password here. And at the very start of this, I heard some people talk about vaults or vault icons as being their favorite feature. But I'd love to hear from the three of you really, what are some of the features or functions of 1Password that you found to be especially useful in you or your team's day-to-days? Chris, why don't we start with you?
Sounds great. I think I already just briefly talked about a little bit of it, but automation has become a huge item for us over the last little while. And I think the one feature that we've been using the most out of 1Password candidly is the skim bridge, which automates the ability for our users to be provisioned to vaults or to the actual application through our identity management provider, which in our case is Okta. So from an IT perspective, it allows a very seamless integration into our 1Password instance, but is completely A, secure, and B, completely automated. So that has been super passionate from us. You know, I think we, and maybe some people will resonate this, all know the feeling of having to log into 1Password and, you know, saying, oh, you're on this team, I need to give you access to this item in this vault. And we've been working very hard to just automate that to a point of, oh, well, you're in this department or you're, you know, in this division, you're going to automatically get this, and ensuring that, you know, we are ensuring, you know, the least visible passwords, but in the most secure fashion. So if people need a little bit more, they can always request a little bit more access when we can adjust their controls, but everything is automated and provisioned from an automatic perspective. So I think that's been something that, you know, really stands out to me. But the other item that I think really resonates with 1Password in my perspective, and it came out, I think, sometime last year, is just your security control center. Like, that didn't used to be a thing when I started at Wealthsimple. And I used 1Password for business, and, you know, the ability now to restrict locations based on, you know, IP address or country, or pull that data into a third party capture tool like a Splunk to be able to analyze. I think that fundamentally has been a huge item for us as well. And, you know, hasn't just said we're a password manager, but we're a password manager that puts, you know, our end user security first, and let's make sure to share as much of that data as, you know, with you as possible. So I think that's been something that's been, you know, very important to us, and something that we've really utilized over the last little while, because security is so important to us all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially now with employees moving around and potentially in very different locations, it becomes all the more important. Long, how about for yourself and your team?
The skim bridge was a fantastic tool for sure. We also use Okta as well, just for provisioning accounts, and as well as when people leave the company, it just terminates, and we don't have to manually do a lot of things. I mean, primarily for us, is just I saw a lot of people just tend to use very passive, you know, credentials and everything, creating not very secure passwords. So just using the password generator, as well as convenience of autofilling and kind of the ability to have access to your passwords and such on multiple sources, you know, from the app to your computer as well. Shared Vault has been great, you know, once that was implemented, just because we have a lot of teams that are storing credentials that are very proprietary to certain, you know, teams and such.
Yeah. Last thing, Patrick?
From an end user perspective, whenever I meet with folks, they like two things. Obviously, when we set them up with an account, we let them know that they also can protect their families, which they usually look at me like, wait, what do you mean, right? Like, how does this align to my personal life? So I think that's been something that's like over the past couple of months that we've been hitting this fairly hard at Checkr. That's been a great feature. Also, yeah, I would say the last two, and one that the end users like as well, is kind of the usage reports. And we're one of our core tenants at Checkr is we call it #transparency. And so we're very transparent on metrics and data, and some of the usage reports that 1Password has. It makes it easy to have conversations with some folks around their data and what they have access to. And It also helps the security team understand if something's been exposed on the public internet. So that's great. Threat intelligence, that's one of the other domains that's evolving that I didn't really speak to, but threat intelligence has been around for some time, but I think it's something that's absolutely necessary for companies nowadays. Having a good threat intelligence feed, having an analyst who can decompose all of that and then relay it to individuals to make decisions. So, and then I think, 1Password, the reports there would be a good feed into a robust threat intelligence platform. So that's great. And then, obviously, lastly, the shared vaults has been fantastic. There is, like Long said, there's quite a few folks internally that work. They have like 1SaaS, right? And so having that vault application, right, and letting the users gather the credential and do whatever they need to do, and ensuring that it's secure and they're not just sharing it willy nilly, and it's written down on their notepads or whatever. That's been great. So quite a bit of functionality already that 1Password provides that we really enjoy.
All right. So final question here, and this is always a fun one. So I'd love to hear from all three of you, of course. If you can wave a magic wand and make 1Password capable of anything at all, what would it be? And I'll say that your wand can make things appear, disappear. The magic here is limitless. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I'll take this first. So I think there's two things that come to mind. And while the UI is great, I do, and some of this is like direct feedback that I've gathered, right? So the UI is great. You can we all know this. You can always make things better. And I think sometimes, and usually it's the non-tech folks, are a little taken back by the UI that they have, right? So I think and I'm not a UX individual. I worked with some folks that can do some amazing things, though. So I'm thinking that something in the UI department would be great, just to have it a little bit more modern or easy for non-technical folks to use, easier. I think that would drive a little bit more adoption. So that's one. The other is, and this is something that I've been thinking about in my own password manager journey, and this has come up quite a bit with end users that I talk to as well, is the mastered password methodology is something that I think, especially with me, took me back when I started looking at password managers, right? So I'm like, okay, I have all of these passwords that I need to, at the time, right? All of these passwords and credentials I need to store, and it's all locked behind this master password that is only, it's something that I need to know, right? The end user knows, but then they have to write it down somewhere, remember it. And I know, obviously 1Password provides their emergency kit, but there's a lot of end users that are likely going to write that down. It's just like it's another password. That's how I look at it, right? And I really do feel that we need to move away from passwords, and like the credential needs to be their biometrics or a passphrase, right? And passwords, a lot of people, when they say passwords nowadays, they think about passphrases, but it's definitely something that I think should be looked at potentially. And then that's my magic wand, would be to move away from what that solution is. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Like my initial mind from a risk perspective goes to, like, could you integrate with some type of MFA solution that just gives you a code every 10 seconds or whatever, and then it's gone. When you think about a threat actor, like if it's a static item, it's easier to get access to brute force or whatever it is, right? Especially if you get access to that machine. So, and the user stores it outside of a secure location. So yeah, those are two areas for me.
Okay, Long, the magic wand's making its way over to you.
Yeah. I mean, there's the evolution. What I've seen so far has been fantastic. But I know one thing that we brought up is within Snowflake, we use something called Vera to encrypt documents and kind of set it to for specific email addresses and timeframes, and that's the one thing we wanted to see if we can have added. I know you mentioned secure share. I probably have to look more into it. I don't know if it fits the needs of what Vera was providing, but I know I've talked to like Dimitri and his team about like, hey, do we have something like this? And I think he mentioned he had a colleague that used to work at Vera or something like that. So I don't know. That's one thing that we have right now would be amazing for some of the things we do at Snowflake, just to be able to encrypt documents to send.
And Chris, over to you.
Awesome. I'm going to pepper you with a few magic wands, so bear with me. I have a bunch of candid ideas that I think would be really, optimal based on the current setup, pulling my own thoughts and a few from my team. But I'll just throw them out there. So you guys just announced Secure Share, which is really awesome. But I would love to see some integrations within Secure Share, like maybe a Slack integration or like a Zendesk or a ticketing integration, because a lot of teams communicate via a ticketing platform. And then from a ease of use perspective, it would be really snazzy to see like a 1Password integration that natively integrates into some of those applications. So that's my first idea. Watchtower, I think, is super awesome and probably one of my favorite personal features, but I would love to see admin reports on Watchtower metrics. I think that would be a game changer. In specific, password reuse is a Watchtower metric that an end user can see. So I can, go in and sometimes say, oh, they've got like 92 reused passwords. They're using password 94 times. That's great. So I would love to be able to not see the password, but identify what users have a huge number of passwords that, even though they're storing in 1Password, are literally just all the exact same password. Couple other thoughts. From a usage reports perspective, again, something that Patrick mentioned, super useful, but I would love to see a little bit more around application usage, like, maybe a little bit of a broader profile of like, somebody has 1Password, but they're just never using it, because then we could potentially tackle the reasons behind why they're not using it, or a little bit of education to get them to use it more. Especially from our perspective where everybody has it, we just want to ensure usage behind that tool. Default permissions. I always feel that they should be provided in a least secure to most secure fashion. And when you're manually granting access to, let's say, an individual within a vault, they get all permissions by default. They can literally share that password, print that password, do anything with that password. And many people often need to go in and minimize that access checkmark by checkmark. And from an ease perspective, it would be really snazzy in the security center to say, set your default permissions, like nobody can ever print or share a password. Just seems very logical to me, unless you're like an administrator. And then that can be a native setting across the board. So when anybody ever shares, a password internally, it can't be shared by a printing or, by, I'm just gonna like send this to you. Some way of limiting that information somehow. Last two things from me. You guys have super awesome firewall rules right now, and they allow country specifically to be locked, but you don't actually alphabetize those firewall rules. So if you add Russia and then Ukraine and then China, it's in that order that you add them. And it would be really snazzy to have them alphabetized from an ease perspective, because 6 months later, when you go in and say, oh, I need to add, let's say, China to this list, you now have to hunt through, let's say, 40 different restrictions to say, where is that specific one? So those are a couple small ones. And then the big magical one that, I don't have the answer to, two-factor authentication is like the most important thing out there right now, in terms of securing passwords and securing identities. Having that secondary method of securing a password is key. So many sites out there don't have that yet. And I don't have this answer. And this is the big magic wand goal. I would love to see some sort of third-party method of MFA that somehow integrates into these sites where, like, candidly speaking, if they just refuse to implement 1Pass or a secondary factor of, authentication, somehow by capturing that in 1Password, it could be implemented. And I don't have that answer. It's kind of like a sign in with Google, but not a sign in with Google. But that's sort of my last major idea for you. So all my magic wands are out there. Thank you.
There we go. A sign in with 1Password. The magic wand is red hot, but lots of great suggestions in there. So thank you. So Long, Chris, Patrick, really a big thank you to all three of you for taking the time to join us today. It's been really helpful to get your honest feedback, but also to gain an understanding of what you're facing in your roles day to day. So from everyone here at 1Password, thank you. And we'll be continuing to work hard to make hopefully your jobs a little easier and your companies and their people that much safer. Bye for now.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.